Okay, well, that transition didn't work well, but we're here.
So,
We're live.
it's so quiet. What happened?
It was supposed to fade. It didn't fade. I don't know what. I don't know. Ha- Technical issues. I was telling you before the show. The editing software I used to export the show for the Patreon, I did the update and it just uninstalled it. So I had to
Oh
reinstall it
no.
while we're going.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's luckily that's the only hiccup today because I think when we did test the broadcast audio, levels were good. So I'm hoping we're coming through nice and loud and clear out there,
And are you
guys.
are you recording well too? Just to double check.
Oh
Last
yeah,
time
we're
we forgot
recording
to
now.
record.
Yeah,
All
because
right.
a
Great.
couple of times in the 39 episodes we've done this, I forgot to hit record right away. So yeah, that caused a delay to getting it, archived and whatnot. But glad to have you back, man. It's
Yeah,
good to have you here.
it's always fun. It's always fun. I love it. You make me read stuff I normally wouldn't. I'm not a huge fan of this genre even, and it's good though. I think it's things like this make you push you out of your comfort zone,
Hmm.
and you read stuff, and then it gives you perspective, and yeah, it was great. I love it. I'm excited to talk about tonight's script because especially I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. So I don't like scary horror movies, but I love Halloween. So I'm more like PG-13 kind of a horror guy. Um, but yeah, so I love that you're doing this. It's a good theme for all of October because you are doing this all through the end of the month, right?
Oh yeah, I was looking throughout the entirety of the blacklist, and it's like we have too many interesting premised horror scripts to just not limit it to the month of Halloween. And they put up Halloween decorations like 2 months ago. I'm like thinking I can do 2 weekends ahead of Halloween, and before we get into like the holiday seasons after
Yeah.
October is completed, and that just allows us to explore a lot more of them as well. And that's just one of the things because I mean it's a fun day. It's treated like a holiday, but it's not actually recognized as a holiday because it's like you don't get time off from work, you don't get double
That's
pay if you're
true.
working on the day. It's just
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
true.
something else. It's akin to Valentine's Day where it's a day where we acknowledge something social, but it has nothing to do with actual holiday. It's not comparable to a civic holiday or a state holiday or any of that type of stuff. Which I'm like, that doesn't seem right. It's
I
it
never
should
thought
be
about
a
it that level.
yeah
That's true though. Yeah.
yeah it should be a day off so that the kids can spend the whole day in costumes playing in with them friends and stuff in the parks on the streets supervised all that stuff and go trick or treating because I think like in my neighborhood Halloween starts at like 3 p.m. and then ends at like 6:30. So and when I was a kid we went all the way to like midnight if we could. um
Oh, trick or treating.
oh yeah, and this is like
Yeah.
from 87 to 97, that 10-year span. And then
Yeah.
that's when you get a little bit too old to do the traditional trick or treating. Then you go into the Halloween parties where that's when you get back home at like 6 a.m. Uh,
Yes, a similar situation for me. Mine was a little different in that when I was in I don't know, around third grade, probably. Yeah, well, that's close enough. We did live in a regular neighborhood, right? So you could just walk through the whole neighborhood and go crazy, getting candy. But then we moved out to the country, and once we were out there, you could. I mean, it was quarter mile between houses, right? So it was
mhm.
pointless. You can't walk and do it that way. So then, I think around that time, trunk or treats were here or there at the schools, where you could kind of come together. And yeah, so I didn't have as many of those awesome, TV style Halloweens where you could just walk around your whole neighborhood. But we always had a party somewhere on Halloween, no matter what year it was. And so I remember the big joke was, I remember the first time you know how young I was because it made me laugh so hard. And that was hearing Happy Halloweeny instead of Happy Halloween. And I just thought that was hilarious. And I
Right.
still remember that. It was like fifth grade or something. I'm like, Happy Halloweeny. Oh my God, that's so funny. So yeah, and plus I was born this month, so October and fall has always been, it's just that special time of year. So yeah, I love it. I love this time of year.
Oh, well, that's pretty awesome. So I think that got everybody listening into the mood that we're going to be doing a horror script today. So let's get in on the actual show part. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week for the sixth time on the live show, TJ Mack of Mac Media. How you doing, buddy?
Hello, thank you. You're so great at that intro. I love it.
I've
I love
been
it.
rehearsing it for 39 weeks.
Do you have it fully mesmerized now, or do you have to read it from
I
the
do have
page?
to read it. I always have my notes up just in case because I can't rely on my memory. I've digested intellectually so many things that the very thing I used to criticize my parents of when trying to sort their thoughts, I am now subject to. Because as a kid, it's like I haven't experienced much, so I remember everything I experienced a lot easier and clearer. And then
Oh yeah,
now that I'm like, on the edge of 40, it's like, oh man, I've got a lot of years of memories and
a lot of
knowledge.
sift through a lot of data to get to
Yeah,
things.
it's
Yeah.
I can't purge it myself. Like it's just I can't just voluntarily forget something. It's like I gotta focus on it more and more. So
Yeah.
I always keep the notes up just in case.
Good,
Uh,
good. Well, I've got my notes for tonight for sure. This was a fun one.
this
It was interesting one. I'll say it that way. Yeah.
no, there's some fun to it, and it was interesting. So this week's script is called First You Hear Them. It's written by Sean Harrigan, who doesn't have a whole lot of screenwriting credits or experience. So he's kind of like in the amateur area, which I actually kind of really appreciate because one of the things I think is best served by a list like the Blacklist is the fact that it gives underrepresented writers a chance. And by unrepresented, I just mean people just starting out. Nothing of
Right.
the of their physicality, just them guys starting out. Gives them the chance to kind of open up some doors, network, and what have you. This script finished 10th on the 2023 Blacklist with 19
Nice.
votes. So
Top
it's
10. That's good.
that's pretty impressive. So TJ, share with us the log line of First You Hear Them.
First, you hear them. All right, the log line. A group of 20 somethings try the perfect drug for the very first time. It's only when they come down from the euphoric high that the hauntings begin. First, you hear them, then you see them, then you die. Just kidding. Then they come for you. Oh, sorry, I went off script a little there.
That's quite all right. I will say that's a pretty strong log line. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to pick this one as early as possible for the horror theme portion of the season. The synopsis is as follows: Shay Howland's life is falling apart. She's desperate for a job, struggling with family, and haunted by a series of eerie encounters that seem to follow her everywhere. After taking a mysterious pill at a friend's party, she begins hearing unsettling sounds and seeing terrifying visions that no one else can explain. As her paranoia deepens, Shay must navigate a web of dangerous secrets and strange occurrences, all while questioning her sanity. Will she uncover the truth behind the haunting presence stalking her, or will she become its next victim? So this was a little bit more on the lengthier side of the scripts that we review. It's about 110 pages. I thought it had an interesting voice to it. What were your initial thoughts, TJ?
My first impression was good. It pulled me in. I thought it was well written. I like the opening. It kind of pulls you right in, which in a horror movie, I guess this is more norm, more mainstream than it used to be, which was for so many decades. It was, you're safe for the first 15 minutes. This one opens with in the first 3 minutes that we have some craziness happen that's pretty scary. But on that note, from a writer's perspective, I'm like, that's what you want. You want a hook to pull your audience in. So I think horror's kind of always been the exception to that rule, where you don't need a hook right away. You kind of want to. Alfred Hitchcock kind of was great at that, right? Where he'd get everyone comfortable, get everyone relaxed, and then start to ramp it up. And but it seems like anymore. Correct me if I'm wrong, but because I don't watch a ton of horror movies, but it seems like it's more the norm now to know just jump in, have a hook, get them shocked right from the get go, and then just keep the rhythm going from there. And so yeah. But my initial impressions was I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy about this genre, but I want to read this and give it a nice neutral stance from where I get started. And I feel like I did that great, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the writing. I felt like the pacing was good, the characters were believable, dialogue was good. So yeah, I feel like Sean's a good writer. I was not bored, and I was not disappointed with a lot of cliches or stupid things throughout the entire script. So
I mean, I have a slightly different take on that, just because I probably read way more horror scripts than most people should be ever comfortable reading. But I mean, I enjoyed the way that the opening was presented because it kind of harkens back to Scream, because Scream, that opening is your hook, right? It's Drew Barrymore.
yes,
She's on the phone.
Drew
Boom.
Barrymore.
Sees her boyfriend killed. Then she gets stabbed.
Do you want to play a game?
Exactly, and this kind of felt in that same. It was like the same but different. It actually was. It's actually a great example of the same but different because we have these two characters, Lily and Morgan, who are underslept. They're tired. They're driving out into the middle of nowhere, and they're just trying to get these brown flaky pills because they're hearing these strange noises, and then they're talking about this thing that's following them. And then this also reminded me of It Follows, because It Follows, for those that haven't seen it, it's basically a horror movie that's also an allegory for unprotected sex and the consequences that come with that, whether it's with a child or an STD, whatever it is, this thing is kind of following you for the rest of your life until you pass it on to someone else. This has a similar premise, but the passing on part is under a different rule.
Yeah, there's a twist there. Yep. Which I did like.
Yeah.
Original is good.
Because this one here, one of the two characters bites it in a really horrific way, and I could see a really cool gimmick here because they're essentially being haunted by ghosts that may or may not have also taken this drug in the past. We don't know, which is actually one of the faults of the script, and there's a visualization where you could see a person being killed by the ghost, or like their neck twisted in a certain way, or their body being flung around, like partial exorcist, partial poltergeist, whatever you have from the past. You could see it. It could be a really fun visual that you can have fun that could really scare audiences. But there's also some weird aspects to the fact that how does this actually work? Like we're presented with this first part where they're in the car, they get out of the car, they go to find the drugs, they break into another guy's car to find the drugs. As they're running back, one gets taken out, and then the other, we are left to figure out what happened to her. And then we cut straight to our main character, Shay, who is dealing with the fact that her mom is an addict, and we never see her mom in the script at all. Like she's left rehab, and Shay is stuck with the bill, and her grandmother, Grace, is there, also willing to help out. And we find that Shay is she's very self-conscious about possibly falling into addiction again. And she's dealt with this before. She has an ex-boyfriend named Carson who was an addict. And that is like one of the big underlying themes of this script is trying to maintain recovery. And I thought that was a pretty cool theme.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I totally agree. I was just going to say one more little detail that I remember from the scene that I liked was we kind of established that Grace, the grandmother, you can tell she's been dealing with this and her daughter's addiction for a long time, right? So we kind of get a feel for age here. So what is it? The girl's probably early 20s, 24, maybe somewhere in there.
Shay's like 24. Grace is 83, so the mother's probably in her 50s.
Late 50s, early 60s,
Yeah.
And we see the grandmother has a little bit of dementia there. There was a nod to that, remember? Where grandma was kind of a little confused on some detail. I can't remember what it was. I just remember getting that impression. But real quick, before we go too much further, the other thing I would say is if someone's like, hey, what is this movie? I would describe this as Flatliners meets The Ring.
Yeah.
Where you have like this group of people that all are kind of go in together, try this thing, and then they all have to suffer the consequences. Flatliners, if you haven't seen it, it's a great 90s, I believe early 90s movie with Julia Roberts, Kevin Bacon, Kiefer Sutherland. Great cast, amazing show, and it's about these medical students that kill each other on purpose and then bring them back after, do you remember what it was? 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it was?
It was like, as close to preventing brain damage as possible.
Yes. So they'd ice them up with ice blankets and then kind of put them in stasis and then bring them back. And it was like this rush, right? This total high.
Yeah.
And then there's a consequence to that where they all start seeing ghosts and stuff. And so it really reminded me of that. But then with this, once you take the pill, you can't stop taking the pill because as you come down, it leaves you vulnerable to the ghosts that will kill you. And so you have to take another pill or take another hit and keep going. Kind of like The Ring, where it's like, well, if you don't show the video to somebody else, right? Like, so
then it comes to get you.
Vein.
So
right.
One of the things is like the whole setup here is that Shay, she's unemployed. She's trying to get a job. She's been interviewing a lot.
She had to drop $1,500 on her mother's rehab bill, who we haven't seen yet. She just bailed, right?
bailed.
So we know she's a good. She's gonna pay her bills. She's got a good grandma. Like she's not some total junkie. Like she's got her life together as much as she can, right? She's doing her best.
She's at least got a sense of responsibility to a point. And right now she's in this bind where it's her birthday's coming up. She doesn't have cash to cover rent, and she really doesn't want to go out or anything. But her roommates, Poppy and Javier have planned a party for her, and she's reluctant to go. But of course, they strong arm her because even number one, they're like, you really need to go out. You really need to kind of let loose. You're always uptight. You're stressed out. She's just like, well, it's because I don't want to be doing drugs. I don't want to be drinking a whole lot. I just kind of want to, get a hold on my life. Plus, she has an interview at a hospital for a nurse job the next day. She really wants to, nail that because
at 2:00. I remember that. She has till 2:00. And we see, so did you get the impression that she might have had some problems with drugs in the past and then she backed away? Because she didn't want to fall into her mother's habits. Okay, that's how I felt too, even though they didn't really hit that on the nose.
It was not as strong as it could be. Like that's one of the big failures of the script is like sometimes they have some really catchy lines, sometimes they have some good character interaction, but it all kind of sidesteps away from like what are you trying to really convey here? It's like don't hit me over the head with it, but you've got to outline that a lot stronger. And it's just it's very thin in my opinion.
And Shay, just real quick to connect the dots. Shay, the girl in the opening that doesn't die. There's two girls, Morgan and Lily. Mm-hmm. Lily dies. Morgan doesn't. She gets a pill just in time before we cut away to the main story. And Morgan and Shay were friends. Yeah. So when we do cut to Shay, she's like trying to get a hold of Morgan. So there's a little connection there that does come back later. This is your foreshadowing. So take it from there.
And at the same time, we also have there's this technique where they're introducing characters off screen by having the characters talk about them. And so it's akin to the "Where's Poochie" gag that Homer Simpson does in The Simpsons, where they just keep talking about a character that they haven't introduced yet. In this case here, at first it's Shay's mom, then it goes straight into Carson, which is Shay's ex-boyfriend, who also happens to be the brother of Morgan. And and there's a lot of history back there, which is briefly touched on, I think, in a decent enough way. But it's something that the writer does a good job of showing that Shay is really bothered by what happened between her and Carson. And I liked how they did that, and I liked how the fact that Poppy and Javier used that relationship as justification for her to get out and meet other people and socialize again. But when we get to the club, she's having a fun time dancing and whatnot, but she's only drinking water. She's not doing alcohol. She's not doing cigarettes. She's not doing any narcotics, nothing of that nature, until Derek shows up, who happens to be their friend and also a drug dealer. And you have this very awkward conversation where she's like, oh, I got a whole bunch of gifts for you. And then Derek's like, oh, wait, right. Yeah, you're not doing that anymore. Sorry, this is tempting you, right? And it's just really kind of cringy.
Okay, and pause on Derek the drug dealer for a minute, Kate, because were you questioning as soon as he gets introduced that he was the drug dealer from the opening scene? Because I was like, is this the same guy? What's he drive? I want to know what he drove because that's how they really, helped
identify him. Yeah.
Scene. And I'm like, is this the same dude? But I'm like, no, because then he would have known Morgan, right?
Yeah.
If he did. So I guess that was a different drug dealer. So this comes back to, there's a lot of confusion in this script of like, how widespread is this drug? Mm-hmm. Like, is this just in this small town? Is it just one dealer and we nipped it in the bud? Thank God, because if this got onto the streets of LA, like we'd have an epidemic forever. So I was a little confused on that, like who this drug dealer was, but he's not, right? He's a different guy than the opening drug dealer.
Yeah, he's just a different guy. I think the opening drug dealer is the other character that comes in later, which we'll get to in a moment. But Derek is just kind of like this low level dude with a whole bunch. Basically, he's got a pharmacy in his backpack.
Yes, they're just walking around with that. I don't know how often that happens. I don't live in that world, but it seemed kind of stupid to me. But Javier's the like super chillax dude. He's that character that's just like anything goes kind of a guy, which is good. You set that contrast because later on he's not that guy anymore.
Oh yeah, that falls apart pretty quick.
Yeah, which is good. I like that. Let's have the contrast. The dude that you can never ruffle his feathers, and now he's got he's seeing stuff that's coming to kill him, and poor dude. Yeah, and then Poppy she was there. She was the roommate. I didn't think there was
She was
anything that
the
stood out
the
about
peer
her.
pressure agent because
That's true.
basically,
That's true.
like, this was the part where I think the impetus needs to be the inciting incident needs to be rewritten quite heavily, because the whole idea is that Derek's like, oh yeah, I got these really expensive drugs. There's these brown pills that are kind of flaky, look disgusting, but they're apparently really expensive and sought after. And Poppy's like, oh, we need to take this. And Shay's like, okay, you go ahead. I'm not interested. And Poppy's like, oh, but come on, it's your birthday. And it's like, oh, we're doing this angle now. This is how we're
Yeah,
gonna trigger it. It's like, I think
yeah.
there's a
She's a
better way to
crappy
do
friend.
this.
She's a crappy friend. If you have a
Yeah,
friend who's trying not to do drugs, you're not a good friend if you try to talk them into it. Ever. There's no exception. You're a crappy friend. Like, you should support them. Be like, okay, that's fine. But instead, she not only does that, but then the way she did it, right? She's like, you're not going to turn into your mom. You've got us. She had no one. And I'm like,
well,
yeah, that's how it always starts until you're a total junkie, and then you end up with no one because you like alienate and steal and rob from all your friends and turn into a monster, right?
or
Like,
they rob from you, and then you are all going your
yes,
separate ways. Like
yes,
this, there's a
yeah.
reason why they're alone at the end, but they weren't at the beginning.
Yes. Yeah, that really did bug me. I'm like, yeah, some friend you are, Poppy. So, yeah, but it moves the plot forward. So,
It
here we go.
does, and it's a very different type of drug. It's actually one where it brings in a great sense of calmness and relief, but it doesn't cause hallucinations. It's not addictive, and that's kind of what is the gimmick to it. It's like, it's not addictive. But the fact of the matter is, it's a suppressant to opening up a new sense of senses, and that, I'm like, that's a clever gimmick, right? Because
Yes,
for each of
yes,
them, they're like, yeah, we don't have to take it, but when they start hearing things like scratches and taps going on, and then they start
yes,
seeing the shadows, and they're like,
yes.
what the heck is this? They're like, oh, we've just unlocked a visual spectrum that we've never seen before, and now we can physically interact with this other world. And for some twisted reason, this other world wants us to join them
Yes.
as a corpse and as a spirit. And the only way you can stop that is by taking this drug. So, I mean, I appreciate the allegory to it, where it's like, well, we're going to supplant addiction with the concept of survival, which is one of the excuses that a lot of addicts have, which is like, I need this drug to survive, because you're suffering, internally for it with all these
Right.
other stuff. So I'm like, okay, this is
Withdrawals
a
and
really
stuff. Yeah.
cool horror allegory. Like, this is where you have the It Follows parallel to it. But
Yeah, and I liked it. I really liked that angle. I just feel like it wasn't fleshed out enough. It needed this whole script needed one more rewrite, in my opinion. But
I think what
um,
would have worked better for Shay is if she was a casual drug user and always willing to be experimenting and not so kind of uptight, responsible, and terrified. I think putting her in a situation where she's a little bit more reckless would um, make it more easy to believe that, oh, she's dancing with this guy or this boyfriend who's like, hey, you want to try this new thing? And she's just like, heck yeah. That makes more sense because we've already established a pattern of behavior. And in this case here, we've established a pattern of behavior that basically contradicts the actual following actions that happen at the party.
okay, well, here's my first rough draft of rewriting this event that triggers everything else. Instead of, you went the exact opposite. You're like, let's just make her sort of a junkie or a casual drug
Not a
user.
junkie, but just like,
Right.
you're
Sorry.
late, early 20s. Oh, yeah, I'll
Just
have a
having
beer.
fun.
I'll smoke a joint. I'll do a line of
Right.
whatever. And then that's all I got to do.
Right. I misspoke. I didn't mean to say
No,
junkie,
no,
but
it's
yes,
okay.
I see what you're saying. So my angle would have been this. What if instead of that, her good roommate Poppy slipped her something she didn't even know about? So she gets pulled into this whole mess, and it's not even her fault, and she can't get off this ride because of her crappy friend, right? Now we have someone she's still stuck to her morals, right? But now she has to deal with the exact same mess. But we empathize with her at a whole new level because we're like, yeah, she didn't even pick this, man. She got screwed over by getting pulled into this, and now she can't get out because she has to keep taking this stupid drug, right?
Well, I mean, that's
So
one
that
way
could be
to
fun
do
too.
it, but that kind of comes at the sacrifice of the character because it's now no longer their journey. They're now a victim of the antagonist.
Right,
And
but then
yeah,
she has to use her own actions to get out now, though, right? She has to pull herself up
true.
and
But
survive
there's
it.
no real arc for her because she's trying to get back to a sense of normality. Whereas a character arc idea is that you're learning something to become better by the end. So you're acknowledging a flaw that you have internally, going through the motions to exercise it and overcome it, and be at the end. When you have them in the victim position where they're kind of in a good state and their whole journey is to return to that initial state, there's not really much for them to learn on that journey because it's all about just going back to what they've already learned in a previous story. And what the most important part about a story is that you're supposed to be watching the most important moment of that character's life as when they change from, person A to person B.
What if the arc, though, was that she never empathized with her druggy mother? She hated her mother because of the drugs, right? Mm-hmm. And now after going through this experience, she's learned how to have at a whole new level of empathy for what her mother went through.
Oh, that would be a little bit too complex, but there's something that you can do with that. The mother character would have to be more significant of a presence in the story. And again, you still have to come to those terms of how do you get the daughter into that situation where she can go through that trial. Also, that it also does another thing too, where it actually robs the characters initially of empathy, where the only reason they could actually generate the empathy is having to experience the same suffering that their mother had, as opposed to experiencing the suffering externally and having human empathy for that suffering. So that's another part too, because that also makes your character look a little
you're
flimsy
getting way
as
too
well.
deep.
This is the stuff. These are the types of things in writers' rooms that you gotta figure out, right? Because it's all about well, what does it say to have a perfect character that then gets victimized and then overcomes that part? Well, if they overcome it at the end and they're back to where they are at point A, that's not a character arc. So basically, you've just shown us a moment of them overcoming something. But
I'm just saying, I know how the script ends, and there's no real closure on the arc anyway. So I guess that's
no. I mean, that's again, without spoiling it. That's the other problem, right? It's like we know how this script ends, and we're like, this is not how that works.
This is it. Spoiler alert. We're not going to spoil the ending, but we will tell you this: it's definitely got you scratching your head at the end, going, "Huh? What?
Yes.
What? What are the rules here, and why did this happen?" Like, that's kind of where this script ends, and you're just like, bleh.
Even the rules, like the only rule that's consistent is that when you take the drug, it gives you some peace and euphoria for a few hours. I would say like maybe 6 or so, and then
between 4 and 6 hours. They never established that either, but somewhere in that window.
Window, and then you start hearing the scratches and the taps, and after a while of that, you then start seeing the shadows. And then a while after that, those shadows start to see you, and then that's when they come after you. And you have to go on to like a cycle. I'm like, okay, that's a rule, and that's sadly the only consistent rule, because these things just kind of appear. And just like normal ghosts would, like, they can't be really stopped in whatever way you would normally imagine or think of for a non-spirit-like entity. But like, I like how the pacing of this works, where Shay has a euphoric drug, everything is all good. She wakes up a little later in the day than expected. She's got maybe 2 hours to make her interview. She hops into the shower. Her friend makes her lunch. She gets out. She starts hearing tapping, and she's trying to figure out, well, where's that tapping? Is it a pipe? Is it a window? What's going on? And then she's asking her friend Poppy, hey, did you hear anything? She's like, no, I haven't heard anything. And they've got like 3 pills left. And yeah, you can tell that they're kind of on edge, but not for the fact that they need to do the drug again. It's just for the fact that they're hearing sounds and things are not adding up. And then it kind of escalates rather quickly, where they already realize, well, maybe we should like take the pill again just to get that feeling. And it's like, well, that's jumping an extra story beat ahead of where you really want to be at this moment. Like, you really need to kind of draw out this mystery and let it breathe a little bit more, so that you can kind of see the stakes, so that you can also kind of understand the perspective of, oh, here's this character Shay, who we've established doesn't really want to be like her mom, and yet we throw her as quickly as possible into her cutting up half of these pills and taking it right away, and coming to the conclusion that taking the pill will quell the weird noises that she's hearing, as opposed to finding a more interesting way to do that, like maybe through Poppy, because again, one of my favorite rules of screenwriting is never make anything easy for your main character. And they kind of come to this conclusion in the morning, right before Shay has to go to her job interview at the hospital. She's like, okay, like Poppy's like, oh, we'll go with you and we'll keep you safe and everything. And she's like, no, I'll go do it on my own. She takes the pill. Well, we don't see her take one of the pills, but we find out later she's got it in her glove compartment. She goes into the waiting area for the interview. She's, fidgeting, waiting for it, eager, nervous, all the normal things. She then starts hearing some scratching on the windows, which I thought was a nice little touch. And then when her name's called in, she's like, oh, I forgot my resume. Can I just go to my car and get it? And she's like, oh, you don't need it. You can get it after. And she's like, no, I'm going. She bolts back to her car, grabs the pill, takes it immediately, and then comes back in and then nails the interview. And
comes back with her new hire folder.
With her new hire folder, all the paperwork. And it's like, yeah, this seems a little bit too quick at this point here. Like, I think it would have been more interesting if we got to see her try to answer these questions in this interview while the scratches and the tappings were escalating around her. And I also think it should not have been a slam dunk right on that first interview. I think it would have been better if we got to the point where the interviewer was like, you know what, I like your resume. You answer the questions well. We're going to schedule you for a second round of follow-up interviews after we check your references, that type of stuff, like the normal standard operating procedure of job hunting. And then that's where she's like trying to drive home and she's got, it's these noises and this presence kind of comes a bit more foreboding. And by the time she gets back, Poppy's like, oh, thank God you're here. We figured out what the issue is. You got to just take another pill and it all goes away. She's like, I don't want to do that. Like, you have to. And then we follow Shay's struggle throughout the rest of the day. And then she gets a call saying, hey, yeah, we want you to come in tomorrow for your final round of interviews. That's where you can have the whole, she takes the pill right before the interview. She nails it. She gets her hires. And then we can see, I think that creates a better, peak and valley story beat to get her more dependent on this drug. Because, she struggled through the first interview, then she took the drug for the second interview, then she got the job, and now she can associate the success of the job with the use of the drug, and therefore you have that extra layer of dependency where it's not just trying to block out these noises and this weird presence. It's also, this puts me in the mindset that allows me to be productive and get a job and get money again. And there's your deeper level of excuses for using this type of narcotic.
Right, and on that note, do you think it would have been more interesting if the drug effect, when it was in the good, in the beginning, in the good phase, that it did something cooler, right, to contrast the darkness? So, not maybe give you superpowers, but like makes you super clear on how you think, right? So you can recall like any memory from anywhere. Basically, gives you a photographic memory, something really cool, so that there's a really high up, and then to correspond with the really down low. Hey, we're being haunted and we're going to get murdered.
Yeah, because there wasn't really much elaboration on what it did, other than it just gave you an overwhelming sense of calmness and confidence.
Yeah,
and it's
I felt like that was kind of boring.
That's kind of boring. That's also kind of vague. But it would have been more interesting if it was like what people think Ritalin should be, which is, it helps you focus. Where most times when you take the dose or a little bit more than that, you are so hyper focused that you almost have tunnel vision. And that's where you have a problem. I think it would be, because again, the logline says it's the perfect drug, right? So what would a perfect drug
make
do?
It like what was that one show, the one movie, Unlimited or whatever, like that?
Limitless. Yeah.
Yeah, where you're just like, boom, like that, something like that. I mean, don't copy them, but do something similar where you really like take it for this thing. And then that could actually, if you think about it, that could play back into the original reason why she took a drug. Like, what if she got started on drugs because she had the best of intentions, right? And then it turned out there was this whole dark side. But let's not go back and revisit that. But I just think that, again, I'll go back to what I said before, which I think this needs one more rewrite. We're really close to having this really tight, perfect script. We just need to establish the rules better. We need to establish the initial trigger better. We need to flesh out maybe. I feel like I said, I just feel like her roommate was kind of forgettable, but she was there the whole time, right? But I didn't care.
Pretty much.
So anyway, let's keep going. Let's keep going with our momentum.
We get a weird lull in the second act, and that's basically when they're like, okay, we're out of drugs. Now we're on this mission that actually repeats a little bit too often, unfortunately, and that is, well, we got to find more.
Yeah.
And it's not a common drug. And so they go to like Derek's house, but he's not there. But this is now finally where Shay reconnects with Carson, and Carson has been he's looking horrible. He's actually been on this drug for like 6 weeks. He's got, sunken eyes. He's scraggly, scruffy, probably hasn't showered in a while. He scares Shay in a very cliche moment where he comes up behind her, puts his hand over her mouth and says, it's okay, it's me. That's not how you really want,
right?
Yeah. It's like, that's not how you really want to be reintroduce yourself to someone you haven't seen in a while, and also had like what appears to be a bad breakup. It's like, oh my God, no, that's the type of move you do before you kill somebody and have to hide their body.
Yeah, and that falls into the tropes of like what forgivable stuff in a horror film, right? Like, okay, there's a little jump scare, blah blah. It's a little cliche, but it's also kind of forgivable because this is what we're doing, right? This is what we're here for. I'm here to watch this movie. But yes, I think it could have been done better. It doesn't need to be there, but I didn't totally hate it, right? I was just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, it's a cliche, it's a safe trope, but I think the next beat that happens after that is after they're talking, and then Shay goes into the washroom because she's hearing the sounds, and then she sees like the bloody face imprint on the tub. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's how you can kind of twist this scene around.
I forgot about that. And then we see the camera pans over later as they leave, and there's another one behind the door, remember?
Yes. And you're like, oh, that's really cool. Like, because it was just a normal meet and greet, and then you have the normal tension of, oh, it's the exes kind of reconnecting for the first time after a bad breakup, so you got that tension, then you got the tension of the drugs on top of that, and then you have the whole idea of, okay, they know that both of them know there's a presence. One guy has a lot more information than the other, so there's a little bit of dramatic irony there. But although the audience doesn't fully know that, but it's fair to assume as such because of his physical depiction. But then she goes into the washroom and boom, she sees the blood stain. It's like, oh, there you go. Now it's like, oh, can we really trust Carson? What's he been doing for the past 6 weeks? Is he responsible for this blood stain? Is he like, you've got all these questions that are rushing through your head as an audience member that we're assuming is also rushing through Shay's head, and that's where you get your tension escalated. But it's used and then discarded, and then
it's wasted. Yeah.
What Carson says is like, here's some more pills for you. You have to take them every so many hours in order to keep them away, and Shay's very resistant at first, but then reluctantly takes them and says, I never want to see you again, Carson, blah, blah, blah. And then
don't forget about Poppy. The contrast to Poppy is she's the best friend protecting her BFF from her ex, her druggy ex, and is like, you can't trust him. You can't believe him. Right. And that kind of annoyed me because I'm like,
what a
choice
hypocrite
do you have? What you guys have just seen is these monsters that are going to come kill you if you don't keep taking the drug, yet you still think that he's just lying because he's going to scam you in some way. Like, I get it. I feel like you should have that. There should be some resistance. They're like, hey, we can't trust you. But I just felt like, again, rewrite. We just need to, this needs tweaked just a little bit because it felt like it didn't feel natural to me in that situation where Poppy's just like, oh no, you know why he's here. He's here to scam you and get some money. And so that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I feel like that needed polished a little bit.
It felt a little bit too forced. Like, that's the problem, right? Because when Shay comes back and she's got more of the pills, Javier's freaking out. Poppy is trying to, help him, but at the same time, she's also dealing with whatever is coming after her. And so Shay's like, okay, I'm going to share these drugs with you guys so that we can stave off of it. And maybe if we can contact Derek or find Morgan, because she got a text from Morgan, which is why she went to Derek's house. Maybe we can find some more and then find out what this drug is, because it doesn't have a name, and then see how we can, get out of this problem. So that is their next part, is like, okay, now we have to find out who makes this drug. And of course, this compels them to go back to Carson again. So we just left Carson to have a conversation where they have to talk to Carson again. And it's really, it's not the best part, but I do like the scene when Carson does show up to the apartment and he finds out that Poppy and Javier are also on the drug, and he finds out how Shay got onto it, and he's freaking out at Poppy because he's like, I did this to help Shay, not help you guys. You guys should have been looking out for her. All this stuff here, and we find out that he was actually sober. He managed to the reason he left is to get sober. He gets sober, then somehow, just like with Shay, he falls back into drugs with this new drug here, this brown pill drug, and he's been stuck on it for 6 weeks, and it's really expensive to the point where he's kind of drained his bank account, and he ends up knowing the supplier, and he says the only way we're able to go through his doors is if we have at least $5,000 on them. And all three of these
Yeah, because
characters are
he's
like,
a wholesale drug dealer. He's Walter White in
yeah.
season 3.
And so they're just like, great, so we have to go to the bank and then just basically withdraw every cent we
Yeah.
have.
Everybody pulls their money to go get it. Yep.
Everybody pulls their money. They get the $5,000 in cash. They're all in Shay's car. They drive out to this house like in the middle of nowhere. That's kind of near the warehouse that we saw at the opening of the script. And this is where I think that guy that Lily and Morgan's broke into the car, I think he is this character, this Esteban character who's like 40s. He's from Argentina. He's the dealer.
You think he was the guy from the beginning?
I think he was the guy from the beginning. Yeah.
Because I don't. I think he's the wholesaler. He's not dealing on the street. He's got his place. People come buy from him, and then they go deliver it in smaller doses to everybody else. Right? That's normally how it works.
It could be. Like again, the guy could have just been one of Esteban's guys that is a runner.
Yeah.
But
I guess it doesn't really matter. But yeah. But yeah, he's the wholesaler. He's the dude. Didn't he have a dog too? He had the drug dealer.
He had a dog. There's some other guy in his house. It reminded me of like, you know that scene in the Christian Slater film True Romance where Gary Oldman is playing the crazy Jamaican drug dealer? I was getting flashbacks to that, just the way, the whole dynamic.
I haven't seen that in so long, but you said Christian Slater, and I'm like, I think I do vaguely remember that movie, but yeah, I don't remember that exactly.
But it just felt like, you have these two normal people, relatively normal people, that come in to this eccentric 40-year-old guy who's acting way younger than he is, claims he doesn't do drugs, even though he's definitely doing his own supply.
Yeah.
And, he's talking like, I don't know you. Oh, you're a friend of this guy? Well, this guy hasn't been around for a while, so I don't know. I can't trust him. I have nothing to vouch for you. And, of course, Shay is like saying, do we look like the strung out cop type? And he's like, no, but you look like the, confidential informant type. So
okay, wait. I just thought of something. Did we skip the part where she checked herself into rehab? Didn't that happen before she met the drug dealer?
I thought that happened after.
I can't remember. Why would she check herself in after? Because isn't once her ex shows up, aren't they together the rest of the time? I can't remember.
Well, it's kind of back and forth. Like that's the thing. Let me quickly go back because you're onto something that's a good story beat. So let me just.
Yeah, because I feel like, did we skip that part? Because that I know what happens. I just
I think we probably skipped that part because it happens very quickly. So
yeah.
So she gets her dose again after Carson, freaks out at Poppy and Javier, and that's when Shay's like, I don't want to see you again. I don't care if you can get more. I'm going to do this the right way. And that's when she leaves that night. So So in the morning, after her job interview, she goes to the Derek's house. That's where she runs into Carson. She goes back home, takes the drug again. Carson comes over, explains that all this is crap. Doesn't like it. Shay's like, screw you, get out of there. I'm going to rehab. And then she goes to rehab.
She goes to where we opened with where her mom, where she's paying her mother's bill. She goes there, even gets her mother's room. And then that night, she that's her first real close encounter, right? She's been clean enough that she actually sees did she have the Slender Woman? I think is how she was described, the Slender Woman with the tapping and the scratching.
Yeah, it's pretty much the Slender Woman.
Yeah. And so she freaks out. It's in her room. She's locked in her room for the rehab reasons. And then she goes for the door. It's locked. And then she's like, oh, I can't get out. So then she's banging on the door. No good. So she sees the help button, the call help button next to the bed, I think it was. And she has to go back to that and hit that button. And then you hear this nice, not the nurse, but
it's Ruth, the nurse. She's like, I'm coming. I'll be there in a second. And
yeah. And so meanwhile, this thing's getting closer and closer. And it's weird because it seems like these ghosts, they go through their phases too, so the phases from your point of view are, I hear them, then I see them, then they
come after you.
The shadow. Then I see them. Then they can come after me. And it seems like from their point of view is they can kind of smell you. Then they can kind of hear you. So they kind of shuffle in your direction, but they can't quite see you. And then then they finally can see you. And then once they see you, they're gonna run you down. Right? They're gonna come get you.
Oh yeah.
And so she gets out of the room just in the nick of time, and the nurse is like, "Calm down, it's okay. Let's just get you back in bed." And that's the last place she wants to go, because this whole time she can see this spirit like in her room, like walking out towards her in the hallway.
Yep.
And the nurse calls for help from
Mike the orderly, who manages to capture Shay, and then Shay's struggling, and he's holding on to her, and then Ruth tries to give her a sedative injection. She gets halfway done before Shay like basically breaks Mike's nose with a reverse headbutt.
Yeah. Use him of what's for. And then she makes her way through one of the locked areas, gets to a window, crawls out, runs away.
And when she goes,
runs. I mean, she's half doped up from the drug, but
she's half doped up from the drug, but she manages to get her personal effects in the cupboard by the receptionist. At the receptionist, and then also a rock so that she can use it to break the window so she can unlock it and get out.
Gets to her car, drives home,
where Javier and Poppy are already freaking out because they're on withdrawal as well.
Like, here's the thing. At this point in the script, I'm like, I'm feeling it. Like, I'm in this story at this point. I'm like, oh my God, this would suck, right? For everyone. Can you imagine? Like, they can't see this thing. It's creeping for you. And the nurse is like, no. Let's go back into this dark room that you were just locked in. You just need some more rest, sweetie. And they can't see the ghost, but you can. And you're like, so this was all really good. I love this scene. She had to get out, and yeah, it seemed kind of convenient. She found her stuff, and she gets out. But hey, it's okay. It's a horror movie. I'm okay with this.
It's a horror movie. So she manages to call Carson back over again. This is where Carson starts to explain the rules as he understands them, which is like, like he has this one ghost that haunts him that he's named Delilah, who
Delilah
appears every once in a while, and he basically says, "Listen, the only way we can survive this together is if we take at the same time." Because that's how the drug metabolizes.
And was Delilah the one with the chest cracked open? Was that Delilah?
Yeah, I think she's the one with the chest cracked open.
I don't want to go into too many spoilers because we find out later who that is.
Yes. Yeah, but we're not going to reveal that here.
we got to save some stuff. Okay, so yeah, we kind of bounced around. We
bounced around a little bit because
But this is, to be fair, in our defense, that's the thing about this script is it's not all over the place. How would you describe this script? It's hard to.
It's a little scattershot.
Yeah, the beats are kind of there and then they're off, and then they're on and then they're off, and so it's back and forth. And so that's the kind of thing that's one thing that I would complain about is I'm just feel like it's just not, the rhythm isn't there. It's like listening to a song that changes its beat too many times back and forth, and so you kind of get lost.
It goes all over the place. It's like someone who listened to Tubular Bells and then said, I can write a screenplay like that, and then completely forgets the transitions for that Tubular Bells makes throughout the entirety of that huge song in order to keep it all similar, right? So that's kind of like the weird part we have here, part of me thinks that's intentional to kind of reflect the whole chaotic nature of, drug addiction. But it just, maybe it can work on film and not so much on the page.
Here's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking Clockwork Orange, right? Like that is like, what the crap, right? And I feel like maybe, I get that. If you want your viewers to kind of feel this way when they're watching the film, then do that, but you have to do it better. You know what I mean? You have to, if that's what you're going for is for the audience, because you don't want your audience so lost that they tune out. But you also, if you want them to feel the chaos of this whole situation, this whole story, then you have to be careful in how you confuse the audience. You got to do it at smaller doses, more spread out, I guess, is how I'd say it.
Yeah, like maybe
it's got to be hard to write that way.
Maybe take a look at a movie like Requiem for a Dream, because that deals with the drug addiction stuff as well. And there's a pacing in that film and the way that it kind of cuts to various scenes that I think might give this script a stronger spine to it. Because this one here, they do keep it very surface level in the sense that, okay, you have to take this drug every so many hours. We're out of the drugs, which means we have to go to the source, which is going to Esteban. And then we find out from Esteban, well, he doesn't make his drug in pill form. That usually happens, from another step between. So his is just the powder.
They get a baggie.
And then they get a baggie, like a nothing baggie for $5,000.
Yeah, that's described as like way smaller than what they expected for paying $5,000. And they're like, well, this is what it is. Let's go. It's like you can't really complain to the drug wholesaler with a gun. They're like, hey, we want more. This isn't fair, right? So they end up, they get the stuff.
They're already hearing the sounds, but they don't, for some reason, they do not decide to take it while they're in the car. They decide to drive
that was dumb too. Or even
home.
In his house, right? I think he would have understood if he understands what this drug does, which he alludes to that he does. He's like, yeah, I don't take it, but I understand, right? Yeah. And right there, just do a quick snort. If it was me, as soon as he handed it to me, I'd be doing a snort if I've got these ghosts ready to kick in the front door.
Yeah.
But anyway, they don't. And again, this is part of being a horror movie where you're like, don't go in that room, don't go in that thing, right? And don't go upstairs. It's one of those moments where you're like, well, take the drug now. Don't go out to your car and sit in the dark, right? But they do. And so
They
again,
they
it's a
do
trope, but I forgave it. Yeah.
they do, and then it's like, okay, we're gonna drive home. So they drive through the neighborhood, and they're kind of freaking out because they start hearing thumping in the trunk.
Yeah. Sorry. Let me back up. They don't take it in the car. They get to the car and they're like, "We need to go find a quiet spot to do this, right?" and that's what leads to this next whole scenario. So again, it's a horror movie. Okay, they were dumb. They should have taken it right away. They didn't. And then what happens? They get sex lights in the rearview mirror, which means cop lights.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So and then what happens? Script, do tell us what happens next.
So the trunk is thumping pretty loudly. All four in the car are freaking out, but Shay has managed to hide the drugs underneath her seat. She's going through the normal police procedures, like, hey, what are you doing up here? Oh, we're visiting a friend. At this hour, yeah. What's the address? She gives them an address, and they decide to go check it.
Meanwhile, the cops do. Imagine, the stress when you get pulled over, right?
Yeah.
And then and at the same time, you keep hearing this like thunk, 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 thunk happening in the trunk.
And she keeps looking at the trunk too, and that doesn't help.
And then she's looking at the trunk in the rearview mirror. So the cop's like, "What do you got back there? Why are you looking back there?" Right? Which makes this scene was so good, dude. And then Javier's in the back seat, like Mr. Chillax, right? He's back there, and then we see the seat push forward, like whatever's in the trunk is trying to come through the back seat, and poor Javier's back there with cops with flashlights on each side of the car, and then something's trying to come through and kill him. I was just like, dude, this scene was so good. I was like, holy crap, this really sucks, dude. It was good. This is one of
this
the
is
highlights
like one of the
film.
this is like one of the set pieces that you would tease a little bit in the trailer, but you wouldn't actually show until the movie itself, because you want that tension. But it's what's clever is, like, Shay says, there's nothing in the trunk, and don't you need a warrant? And he's like, not if I've got probable cause. And I think you constantly looking back there, and you.
Well, no, he saw them. He said he used the fact that he saw them leaving. They were trespassing on the warehouse property.
Right.
He used that as his probable cause. We kind of glossed over that. They found.
That's right, because when they drove through the warehouse property, they find
stuff, dude.
They find it's again, this thing kind of jars around a lot, so I apologize. But yeah, this
is important. We got to talk about.
They go through the warehouse. They cut through the warehouse, and as they cut through the warehouse, they find Morgan's car, and then they find her body, and she's got these finger marks across her neck as if she's been strangled, and there's also like this weird root coming out of her mouth.
Right.
And,
which, again, sorry to jump back, we missed it, but in the opening scene, we did see that little root in the mouth of Lily, I believe her name was.
Yes, right after her neck was broken.
So at this point, we understand, like, these people doing these drugs, there's this plant or whatever, fungus, whatever it is growing from inside of them, is a side effect of taking these drugs. And at some point, I think also our main protagonist, she saw this after she got scratched by that thing in the rehab center. I think she got scratched and saw something in her wound too. There was something weird inside there. But she didn't mention that to her friends, which I'm like, oh, some friend you are. I'd have been like, dude, this monster thing scratched me, and I saw, like, brown leaves and stuff inside of me, whatever it was. So anyway, sorry, we skipped over that too. But
that part there, because that's basically what it was. Like, on their way back, they take a detour because they see Morgan's car, and so they trespass into this warehouse area. They find her body. They don't call the cops. They don't do anything. So they're just freaking out. They're like, we got to get out of here. Then we can call the cops. And then they get pulled over. And of course, they're not in the best position to actually say, yeah, we just saw our best friend and this guy's sister dead lying in the warehouse. It's like they don't say that because it'd be too difficult for them to explain why they didn't contact the authorities at that moment or anything of that nature.
Plus, they're about to get murdered. They're like, they hear these noises. They know what's happening. And so they're trying to play it cool while they get pulled over.
But this is actually
that's why this is so good. This is like you're getting pressure. This is what makes stories interesting. Is you've got pressure, right? Whether it's they're running out of time. Time is always a good pressure cooker. But it's pressure because you're getting stopped by police. It's pressure because you just saw your best friend and sister was her body, right? Which is enough. Any of these things are enough on their own. Then you get pulled over. Then because you're hearing the noises in the trunk, you're super stressed. You look in the mirror. Then that escalates the police. They're now on defensive mode because they're like, why do you keep looking at the trunk? And so this whole thing, it's just a pressure cooker. This was so good.
But when she pops the trunk so that the cops can look inside, they don't find anything. And I was kind of very happy that the writer did not try to say, oh, the cops are planting anything or whatnot. They just don't. They say, we don't find anything, but whatever was in the trunk has actually gotten out now. and it walks alongside the side of the car, and Javier
Starts
is
banging on.
freaking out.
Yeah, poor Javier, Mr. Chillax is in the back seat, and this thing's banging on his window now, looking at him like drooling, like, ugh. And I'm like, oh my god, this was so bad, dude. This was horrible. I loved it. It made me so uncomfortable to read this scene.
But
So,
then this brings
yeah.
up the other question, right? Right, like, which is, well, how did it get into the trunk in the first place? Why was it
Yep.
stuck in the trunk?
Yep.
This nothing like this happened with the other ghost at the rehab center. And you and I are both asking ourselves at this point, like, what are the rules now? Like,
Yeah. What are the rules? What are the
can they
rules?
be stopped by mortal, like, inorganic material? Like,
Can you hit him with a 2x4 and knock him down? Can you kick him? Can you if you just keep moving? That was the thing. My first go to was like, just don't stop. Just get on a plane, right, and fly somewhere. Like, as long as you're moving, they can't catch you. Or if you're on a 737, is one of them going to crawl out of the bathroom? Like, what are the rules? It's
right.
you just don't know. And we were talking about this as we were getting started for the show, and this is both of our biggest complaints is like, well, you don't know the rules, so you don't know as a viewer. You're confused on what you should be afraid of and what you shouldn't be afraid of. Like, what are the limits of these things, you know? And so, as good as this scene was, you're still kind of scratching your head in the background, like, well, what can or can't they do? And for a while, it's okay to have that, right? To have it be a mystery to us, and we're as confused as our characters are, and like, well, I don't know. Are they coming through? Can they come through a window? Can they come through the walls? But at some point, you have to establish enough of the rules that even them, and I felt like this was the chance for her boyfriend. What was his name? I
Carson.
forgot his name.
Carson.
Already. Yeah, for Carson to be like, okay, this is what I figured out, right? That at least he could have come through as like, okay, it's understandable that he knows this because he's been on it for a month or so. But anyway, it was just, this is the recurring theme, is you just don't know what the rules are, and it's really frustrating as a viewer. And we'll get to the spoil free ending too. It's part of this same. It follows the same theme where you're kind of like, huh, what?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so the cops, like, at this point, Javier freaks out, bells out of the car, right? They all kind of take off because they go back. The cops go back to check their stuff, and they're like, "We're out," because this thing is about to break through the window.
Pretty much,
And-
Shay just like floors it. Then
Oh no, she takes off. She takes off.
She takes off. They manage to stay ahead of the cops, and then they ditch their car right outside of like this giant park, and then they run into the woods.
Right.
And here's the point: like, Javier is the one that grabs the drugs. So all four of them are running into the woods. They're kind of trying to get away from the cops. They hear all these new sounds now that they can't tell if it's coming from the woods or if it's coming from the ghosts or spirits that are haunting them. And then all of a sudden, this giant beast just comes out of the shadows. This giant shadowy beast comes out and tackles Javier. They think it's the ghost that got him, but when they stop and take a closer look, it's actually one of the cops. One of the cops managed to capture Javier. He's got the drugs. They can't go back to get him. They can't get the drugs to stave off these ghosts, so they got to leave their friend behind and just run. And now they're in this position where it's like, well, he's going to be arrested, and they're going to get him. We have to get him out of jail. Well, how do we do that? Well, we need bail money. So now we're back to the same problem that they had before with, okay, we need money for the drugs. Now we need money for Javier's bail. So we're repeating a story beat again.
No, it doesn't even make sense. That part pissed me off. It doesn't matter if you bail out your friend. They've compensated the drugs. They're not gonna be like, oh, you bail out your friend. Well, here's the drugs. And
Here's your
his
drugs
watch
back.
and his belt and his drugs. Like,
Right.
That's not how it's gonna work. So I'm like, that's not even a solution. So that bugged me. I'm like, this is dumb. Like, it doesn't matter if you bail out your friend, right?
Yeah.
At this point, he got captured. There's nothing you could do about it. You guys still need drugs. Go back to Esteban at this point. So anyway, that felt stupid to me, like a bad that was beyond just a trope, a horror story trope. That felt really stupid to me. That was a bad plan.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
it's
that's how I
basically,
felt
we
about
should
that
go
part.
get the drugs first, then bail out Javier, so we have something to give him to keep him alive longer, and then we'll
Yeah,
deal with
because-
that problem later. Yeah.
Because you're not getting those drugs back unless he threw them under a bush or something before he got tackled. Like, those drugs are gone.
Yeah.
So
and
so that seemed like a huge plot hole to me. I'm like, no, this doesn't make sense.
it doesn't. And then the other part that kind of threw me off is they call an Uber, And I'm wondering, well, with what money? Because didn't she put
I thought that too.
$1,500 on her credit card? Didn't they
Uh,
also clean out their bank accounts? How are they
It
affording
was
an
on
Uber?
credit. She had a credit card. It was on her Amex, dude. It was fine. Whatever.
She,
Like that was, but I did think that too. I thought, wait, I thought they were broke, but I'm like, well, are they broke, or are they broke? You know,
do they have a
like,
Uber credit by chance for something?
yeah, yeah. Somebody installed the app for the first time and they got their first ride for
They've
free.
got first ride for free.
So yeah, I totally thought that same thing though as you. That's hilarious. So then what do they do next? I'm kind of
Okay.
lost. I can't remember this
So
part now.
this is where we get into another trope, but a good one, because this is now they need money. So what does Shay do? She goes to her grandmother's house,
Oh yes.
and while her grandmother's sleeping, she starts to take some of her jewelry.
So now
However,
she is. Here's the irony: she is now becoming her mother.
she's
She's now
becoming her
stealing
mother.
from her grandmother for drug money, literally drug money.
Lit-
So I
well,
didn't. I
bail
did
money
not.
actually at this point, because
Yeah,
they don't
yeah,
even
bail
think
money.
about the drugs yet.
That's true. That's true. It's bail money, but still stealing from her grandma to get money, which was very her mother a signature move of her mother, who was a junkie. So the irony was not lost on me. I felt like that was good writing, and it made sense in the story. Like, hey, who's got something that we could sell? Grandma has jewelry, so she does that. Meanwhile, she's still got this monster hunting her, this ghost haunting her, right?
And the ghost is actually like scratching the windows in her grandmother's house. And the ghost actually physically like grabs Shay as she's trying to get out without waking her grandmother. And her grandmother then of course hears the scuffle, wakes up, and she's asking Shay a question like, "What are you doing here? What's going on?" And she's like, "It's okay, Grandma. I'm fine. I this is nothing to worry about." She runs into the washroom, and then she tries to get out the bathroom window, and then that's when the thin lady like grabs her ankle. Shay's grandma opens the door. She sees Shay trying to get out through the window and then flailing her other leg, trying to kick off something that's got her held leg stationary.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah, the
like,
script was
that's
specifically written to switch camera views and show her from her grandmother's point of view, from Grace's point of view, like she's just kicking in the air, like fighting something. It was very like that to me was very Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Like when
right.
they're having the dream and you see them and there's like you don't see anything, but Freddy's got them. And I'm like, that's cool because that's kind of how it would look. But we've already established that's how it would look because when she was in rehab, this same thing happened, right? Like, so I feel like if we're gonna do that, we should have done the better job of that when it first happened in rehab, right? What did the other people see or not see? And I feel like we didn't quite establish that well enough at that point in the script, but it made total sense. And just to clarify, her grandmother didn't open the door. The freaking ghost kicked down the door.
Oh,
So there
right.
was
That's
no door.
right. Kicked down the door. And she's like, "What's going on with the hinges?" And she's like, "It's okay, Grandma."
Her grandma just sees the door like collapse like for no reason. So yeah, very scary, very good scene, but again, just
dude.
needed a little more polish. I
That just
think, so.
reminded me of the one thing that we missed. So one of the things that happens in the car that causes Shay to take off away from the cops is that, from the cops' point of view, her side window spontaneously breaks.
Oh, shattered. Yes, you're right. And that trigger, like and then she just hits the gas.
And she hits it, and it shatters inwards,
Yes.
right? So the cops are like
yes,
confused because there's no glass on the outside of the car; it's all on the inside, and then that confuses them. But we don't stick with those cops long enough for them to follow through on that part. And then when you just mentioned that, yeah, the thin lady kicked in the doors, like, all right, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the physical connections of what these ghosts are doing around these people.
how strong? Yeah, how strong are they? Like, do they get stronger as you as a as the
As you're on
druggee,
further
the
away
user?
from withdrawal, yeah.
Yes, as you go deeper into withdrawal, do they get stronger? But none of this is ever clarified, which was one of the frustrations of this story. But
Well, the thing,
yeah,
because
you're
all
right.
they could clarify this with every single consistency. It's like, oh, in the first few hours where they find you, you can close the door on them, they can't do anything. Then you establish, oh, it's been another 6 hours. Well, now that door can be kicked right off the hinges and it's effortless, and they can physically grab you. And if you get another 6 hours, like, oh, that's where they can kill you. And if they made that a consistent pattern, then they showed us the rules as opposed to having to tell us the rules. And in this case here, the writer does a great deal to threaten our main characters, but not necessarily pull the trigger on any of them. And I think that's a problem because all the other classic horror films, especially something like Nightmare on Elm Street, almost everybody gets it from Freddy, you know? And you see the various ways that they're picked off one by one so that you understand the stakes, and then at the same time you understand the rules.
And even the opening scene, when Lily gets it, you don't see it happen. You see it right after it happens. You see you see what's her name look up at her from
Morgan.
she's in Morgan's in the car looking through the backpack for drugs or whatever in the car, and then she hears it or whatever and looks up, and then you just see the back of the ghost is facing her, and then she sees her friend's head, all her neck's all broken, her head's leaning at a weird angle over the shoulder of the ghost. And I'm like, yeah, there was, and then everyone else we see is already dead, right? Even as we get to the third act, like you don't see a lot of, there's not a lot of the actual kill shots, right? That you get to see as a viewer.
Right.
And I feel like as a horror movie, probably should see some of that. Like some of them you want the mystery, right? But when you get into the action, like you're gonna, you got to see the money shots for this stuff. So,
Exactly. And while this is definitely framed as a low budget film, the fact of the matter is that you kind of need a slightly larger cast in order to have sacrificial lambs to convey the rules of what's going on and how the main characters can learn these rules and figure a way out to solve them. And right now, this is just a cast of 4 characters, really.
Right.
Poppy, Shay, Carson, and Javier.
Yeah, which works for a low budget. I mean, it's tight. I just think that whatever you do here, there's definitely, I don't want to wrap up, but there's definitely potential for this to have been better. And I love the groundwork. I love the foundation. I love a lot of the walls. I just feel like we need to remodel maybe the bathroom and the kitchen, and then this is ready to go. That's how I feel about this. Like, it's so close. There's just a few things that would need to be fixed in the script. But yeah, so we're getting close to where you want. We don't want to do any more spoilers, right? How much further do you want to go? So
well, I mean, I think we should go to the fact that
they get to the bus, right? They
Shay,
get on the bus out of the park.
They get back to their Uber with Shay's got her grandmother's jewelry.
What part were they on the bus? They were on a bus at some point.
They were on a bus after they left the pawn shop because they get about $4,000 for the jewelry at the pawn shop.
That's right.
They're with Poppy still, like they haven't left her yet. It's these 3 now. They're planning to go.
Poppy. That was
they
the thing
steal.
that bugged me.
They steal Grandma's car. They steal Grandma's car.
Yeah, and wreck it on the way out because this monster or the ghost is trying to
get them. So they wreck a little bit of it. They head over to the bail bondsman and they're about to pay for the bond. And the cops there are grabbing Javier, and as Javier's coming out, his neck is basically twisted 360.
Yeah, like he sees them and waves like, "Oh, thank God, you guys got me out." And then as he's walking, back up, because we set the tone for that when Javier when they do show a scene when he gets thrown in jail,
right?
And he's like, no, please, no, not in there, and the cops are just like, "Get in there, kid," rah rah rah, and they toss him in the jail cell.
Yeah,
and then the camera kind of like pans back or pans over, and we see that the monster is in the next cell next to him.
Right.
It's right next to him. And so then we kind of leave and we're like, I thought at that point, I'm like, was that the end of Javier? Is he dead? Is that it? Like we never see it, but he's done, right? We know he's done.
Right.
And again, what are the rules? Why is it in the other cell? Why isn't it just in his cell? Like what are these rules? So, anyway, so yeah, he comes out, they bail him out. He's walking out, and just as he waves to them, and then maybe makes two
and they're
more
still in the
steps.
car because they're waiting for him outside because they don't want to be identified by the cops because they do the paperwork with the bail bondman. I don't think they hand over the money yet, so they're waiting in the car.
I have no idea. Yeah.
And the cops go bring him out, and then Javier's neck is literally twisted right in front of him, and the cops are freaking out, and the bailsman is freaking out because like, how the heck did this happen?
Yeah.
And Poppy is yelling at Shay, like, we got to go in there. We got to go see how he is. And Shay's like, nope, we can't. We got to leave. And then they just floor it. And so now they're on their trek back to Esteban's place. And they're going to use the $4,000 they have left to buy more drugs so that they can buy themselves more time and essentially figure out what's going on.
Esteban is like, I don't know. It's just a great name for this drug dealer. I loved it.
Oh,
Esteban.
yeah, it's a good name.
What was his accent? And they kind of described
Argentinian.
Sort of like, Argentinian, yeah. And so they get to Esteban's place. They're going to buy some more drugs. Meanwhile, they're still being haunted, you guys. Like, they haven't found drugs yet. It's been a long time at this point. I'm like, how are they still alive? Like, shouldn't things have escalated even more? Like, why are they safe in the car watching the police station yet? Javier somehow got out of his cell. I guess whatever the rules are, maybe somebody opened the cell that the other ghost was in and let him out too. Maybe his ghost buddies paid for his bail and got the ghost out of his cell. I don't know. I don't know what are the
either.
rules?
It's so weird. But they go to Esteban, and something has happened between the time they left and time back because Esteban's now tied up to a chair, and some junkies robbed him.
Yeah, the whole apartment is trashed. You know, there's stuff everywhere, and so they start talking to Esteban, and this is where we start to see Shay get the dark side is coming out. Right? She's like, they start to untie him, and Shay's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, donut time. We need our
Donut
drugs.
We need our drugs first. And very practical. It's true. Like they do, right? If they let him free, like they can't trust this dude. And so, yeah, sorry, you described this scene. You remember
Well,
this stuff more clearly than I do.
yeah, because I kind of went through the script again just before the show started because I wanted to make sure I had as much fresh in my mind as I could. But I mean, the weird part is that it is reading the script and the amount of stuff that happens and the way that it's very linear in presentation, but it feels jarring in execution. So
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly very well described, dude. That's exactly what it is. When you read it, it makes sense, but then you try to recall it, and you're like,
yeah,
wait.
there's just some parts here. So Esteban basically says, "Okay, I got some drugs. I got some more. It's over here. It's squirrel.
Let me go, and I'll show you."
And they're just like, no. And so it's that back and forth. But what we slowly learn is that Esteban is actually on the same drug as well, and he's on a ticking clock. And so he needs the drug quickly also. So they do eventually untie him, but now they're being attacked.
But he's playing it so cool, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's like that felt really weird to me. It was so
It's
jarring
a thrill
when,
to him. That's why.
when his daughter comes out and he's still in the chair and he's like, "Mijo," and that was it. She like drags her nail across his throat, right, and kills him that way.
And basically, yeah, just kills him. And then immediately when he dies, that's when the twig comes out of his mouth that Carson catches. They rush to the washroom and they got we got a little homage to The Shining with Jack Nicholson chopping at the door with the axe type of deal.
Literally written in the script that way.
Yes, literally written in the script that way. And Carson gets the bright idea, is like, you know what, maybe that, like the twig that they see, maybe that's the source of the drug. And so, they kind of collect themselves, they burst out of the washroom, he yanks the twig out of Esteban's mouth, and they bolt back to Grandma's car and then drive away. And basically he just uses the water to rinse off the twig, breaks it into three, and they just start chewing it, and that buys them some more time. And that's kind of where we have to kind of call it for now. Because there's another 20 pages left of their final act. And
that's a good place to stop. Yeah.
It's nuts. I mean, and not in a good way. It's just like, really? This is how you're doing this? Like,
well, I mean, without spoil, we could probably go a little further if you wanted to, but the thing was like that scene right there where they had to chew on the twigs, right? I'm like, that got me too, because I'm like, think about this. They know where those twigs just came from. They had to wash the blood off of them. And they're so desperate that they're literally they have to chew these twigs to protect themselves. And then we could probably go a little further, script. I mean,
well, they head back
it's
home
your show,
to their
dude.
apartment, essentially.
Yeah, and they decide to set it up. Because again, I want to talk about this a little bit more if you'll let me. Because
go ahead.
This goes to the fact that what the freaking crap are the rules? Right. So their big plan is, let's go back to the apartment. Let's hit Home Depot.
Hit the hardware store. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's hit Home Depot. We're going to buy a bunch of lumber and nails and stuff, and then go back to the apartment. And then we're going to basically isolate each of the ghosts in each room, and we're going to retreat through the apartment until we're safe alone in one room. And if we wait long enough, we'll come completely down. And once we get past that phase, we'll be safe and we'll be clean, and they can't get us.
And they estimate 28 hours is how they have to hold out.
And all of this is based on just nothing. They're just like, we hope this works. And on top of that, we skipped over Poppy. What happened to Poppy? Do you remember?
Not really, no.
So when they're going to move on to that next plan, right there, they decide to do the Home Depot stuff. Poppy's like, nah, I'm out. And she just walks away.
Oh, right. Yeah.
She just gets out of the car and is like, I got to do my own thing. Like, literally, that's almost literally what she says. She's just like, okay, I can't do what you guys do. I'm going to do it my own way. And she just walks off into the night, into the neighborhood. Like, that's it.
Yep.
We don't see Poppy again. Well, we do. But we don't. She's not going to do this not Home Alone, but whatever. Well, I don't know how to describe it. This whole apartment plan where they're going to isolate them in each room. And then, long story short, that plan does not work because, again, what are the rules? We don't know. They don't know. Nobody knows.
And then Poppy comes back, and then
and then just end it right there. Don't say.
Yeah, that's about as far as it can go because it's just kind of messy.
It was the J.J. Abrams mystery box at that point. I'm like, you're not gonna tell us. You're not gonna end it with why this is the ending, how it happens. it was just this big fat question mark that just slaps you in the face and says, "Nope, we're not going to explain anything because we don't have the answer to give you, but we're going to pretend that it's just up to interpretation. Bye bye, end of show. Thanks for your money." Like that part really, the ending really left me feeling like screwed over. So, yeah. Anyway, that's how I felt.
It was not too. It was confusing, not satisfying. Kind of deflates everything that was built up. I will say this, like structurally with regards to the beats, there were, I would say 80% of them were good.
Yes.
But the repetitions part is what hurt the script. Another thing is that they're in so much of a panic mode throughout most of the screenplay. I didn't really get a strong sense of these characters individually. Like Carson feels just more like an expositional character as opposed to something that actually has a relationship with Shay or a former relationship with Shay. Because we only get that one major moment at Derek's house.
And that's how I felt about Poppy. Poppy was like so forgettable.
Yeah.
And I feel like Javier wasn't forgettable, but weirdly he should have been because he was like the Mr. Chillax and he, but he was, because he was so chillax when he got his comeuppance, which he didn't really deserve it, right? So I'm like, I kind of liked, I empathize with him because he was just like, hey, let's just do drugs. He didn't try to make his friend do drugs on her birthday. So he was like, there was no unlikable things about Javier. So
no, he was the clown of the group, but he's also the only one that gets sacrificed. And that's...
Yeah, and
it didn't have as much weight to it because you really need more people to start falling off, being knocked off before you get to him, because that's when you start feeling it, because it's like, okay, I can't believe that jerk character, he's dead, good. That jerk woman, she's dead, good. We really like Javier. Oh no, not Javier! And like you want to have that reaction. And
yeah, let's go back to Scream. When people start dropping off in Scream, you're like, some of them you're like, yeah. Other ones you're like, oh, but at least you're invested enough that you have a reaction to each of them dying. And I felt like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but in this script, more people needed to die. They just did. Like there was a lot of suspense, but we needed more. Like this could be a PG-13. I don't know. This could almost be an Alfred Hitchcock or a original Twilight series type episode.
Twilight Zone, yeah.
Yeah, Twilight Zone. Thank you. It could easily have been that because there's nothing that graphic or gory. I think once we get to the final act and you see where the pills are coming from and stuff, you're like, I saw that coming way far away. Did you see that coming?
I kind of was piecing it together once we saw Morgan and she had the twig coming out. It's like, okay, there's two. That's your two. That's your pattern.
I saw around halfway through the script where we never see her mom. I'm like, this is going to come back. This is going to come back.
Right.
And it did. And so, but that doesn't mean I felt cheated. I felt like it made sense. I just felt like the lack of rules and the way it just kind of at the end, it just kind of goes, there's no closure. It just kind of, it's almost like when you're playing tag at recess and then someone's like the bell rings and you're like, oh, pause, we're gonna finish this next time. That's
then you forget.
What the ending feels like. yeah, you forget to pick the game back up. That's what the ending feels like. I'm just like, what happened? Did someone change the channel? So yeah. But like I said, there were some scenes in this that were freaking awesome that weren't just another cliche. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Every day it gets harder as a writer to be original because every day more content goes out onto the planet. And so to come up with original ideas or not, no one's going to come up with a completely original idea, but to come up with new twists on ideas that feel original, it gets harder and harder every day because more and more stuff gets created and put out there. And so I felt like this had so many good moments. I just think it needed one more rewrite, and we need to establish the rules a little better. Even based on the principle of this has potential to be a trilogy or something. This could go on, right? Like what are those ones again? Yeah, sorry, I'm not a huge horror fan, but what are the ones where the whole movies, there's like 9 of them now, are all about how people like cheat death, and then the rest of the movie is death coming to get them. What are those ones?
Final Destination. That's the one.
Final Destinations. Yes, I'm like, this could be similar to that. Like I could see A24 doing 3 of these, and like we were talking about backstage. This is I said 15, you said 5. You could make this movie for $5 million because there's not much CGI here. It's there's not a lot of sets, like or even the sets that you have aren't that expensive. You have an apartment, you have a park, you have a warehouse, like at a drug dealer's house, like a rehab center. Like that's it, right? So yeah, this could be a small budget. And I guess we're kind of getting towards the green light or not. I don't know. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
jumping
Like,
ahead,
is it?
but
We're getting close to that, but we're not 100% there yet because there's still a little bit other stuff to talk about. Because
okay, yeah. What do
I
you want to
mean,
talk about?
I might be sounding like I'm hung up on this idea, but this is a 110-page script, so it's close to the same screen length time of Scream, which is like an hour and 50 minutes. Because that's about 120 pages. So this one's really close to that, and Scream had way more characters, and it had way more situations. It had more going on with it. It was a much more dense and character-driven script with the same page count as this one, but this was not
Yeah.
that dense on the characters. This takes place really within 36 hours, which I do like the contained time frame, but I think because it has this type of breakneck, it's trying to do a breakneck pacing to it, but because it's very jarring, it doesn't feel as intense as I think the writer's intending to, at least for me. And that goes back to like, yeah, this probably does need another pass. However, I definitely can see why this made the top 10 in the blacklist because the premise alone, it's familiar, but it's different enough to work. And the
Yeah,
familiarity
I
is
agree. I
is
agree.
the
Yeah.
ring, it's it follows, it's flatliners, it's all those things, and it's got a potential for a deeper meaning to it, which I think is what you really want with a horror
So,
film.
so question. This is where I want you to do your doctoring, your script doctoring. Okay.
Okay.
So you're saying we need more, and I agree, we need more characters
Hmm.
to establish the rules and also to just kind of flesh it out, right? So we need more people there to murder, to die. Like that sounds terrible, but this is a horror movie, so that's how it is.
Hmm.
We need more people to kill to be killed, but we also need. Are you saying the script length is okay? We just need to put more in there, or are you saying we should add more characters and we also need to shorten the script a little bit? Because for this specific script, we don't need 110, 120 pages for
Well,
this.
I think you can lose probably 30 pages easily by getting rid of the mother rehab sub storyline
Okay.
and Shay going to the rehab again. And I think you
Okay.
can use that time, that real estate, if you will, to introduce some other characters, get into the party quicker, and having some of the other guys get killed off. And actually, to the benefit, because this is an addiction story, because this is a drug story, it should take place over the course of 7 days as opposed to 36 hours. And because you have to establish the building up of the habit, right? And in this case here, the main characters are so well aware of the dependency of it that they immediately go towards, the detoxing right away. And that needs to be your mid-act turning point. Like you should actually be in your stage of denial, and that we're just liking it because there's a tapping thing. Oh, that's kind of annoying. Okay, I'll just forget about it. Hey, you want to go to this party and do this drug again? Sure. Oh, I just did this drug and now that tapping sound is gone. Okay, that's interesting. And then you just kind of build up scene by scene, quick by quick with the other characters. You then have the one character that he missed the party, so he didn't take the drug, and so the tapping is escalated for him, and then we're following him along,
He's the first to
and
go
he's the
because
first to go, and you just kind of build it up that way
yeah, I like
until
that.
the main character figures out the pattern, and then she comes to the realization we got to go cold turkey, and at the same time we have to figure out that when we go cold turkey how to not succumb to whatever the heck happened to Ted or whatever his name would be.
Yeah,
And
or
then
have one of
that's
them
your
if they do. One of them does
that's
get injured, right? And you have the
yeah,
stuff coming out of their wound, and then like maybe they pull on it, and it's like this vine that's like 3 feet long that they pull out of their arm, and they're just disgusted by it, right? They're like, "What is
yeah.
this?" And it's freaking them out, and you just kind of and then, but we got to build the rules better. Like, what can the ghost do? And so yeah, we see him getting stronger the further away from your last usage that you did, and
Right.
I do love the premise of like you're not addicted to it, but you have to keep taking it as if you were, because if you don't, you're gonna die,
You're gonna
right? You're
die,
really gonna die.
or you think you're gonna die, and then it comes down to um overcoming that fear. And again, like this has the potential to be a really deep, fun, low budget horror film, and it's just not there yet because I think it's trying to spend too much on the internal demons of Shay's character with regards to her mother's addiction.
Hmm.
But when you don't show us where the mother is and the relationship between her and her mom, and you only tell us through dialogue between her and her grandmother, it doesn't hold as much weight as you need to. And I'd be of the mind of, let's just cut it out altogether. Let's not even address the whole addiction, genetics, hereditary issue, and just focus on she's a 25-year-old. She's out of college. She's been looking for a job. She still is irresponsible to the point where she likes to party, but but she's depending herself that if she gets a job, she won't have to hide her despair in being unemployed with drugs and alcohol and friends and distractions. So
Right.
like that's what she's looking for.
She's like, as soon as I get my job and start to build my career, like maybe she just graduated from college, and she's
Right.
like, I'm gonna put all that childish stuff behind me, including drug use. Once I get my career, boom, she lands the job. So just as she was almost out, at least from her perspective, she gets pulled back into this through this drug.
Yeah, you could have like she gets hired and she's like, I'm going to celebrate. It's like my bachelorette party of like
my
last
one
hurrah.
last night.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then that's a better inciting incident to get her addicted to this, to get her involved in this thing. And now you have this, you have multiple ticking clocks. First ticking clock you have is, okay, they have to purge themselves of this drug so that they can survive to no longer require it anymore. And then the next ticking clock is she starts work on Monday, and so you're like, she got to get her act together to start work on Monday, the week later. And so that elevates the stakes more. Like, it's not enough that she just dies. It's like, well, maybe what's going to happen to her? Either she dies or she's stuck onto this addiction, in which case all the money that she would be planning to save to pay off her student lets, to pay off her rent that she's earning at working as a nurse, is going to her drug habit instead. And the drug habit is not really a habit of addiction. It's a habit of necessity so that she can keep making money.
This is so out of left field, but I just had this idea as you're describing this, right? Like, say we did it over 7 days, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the situation you just described, right? She got her job. She has this last hurrah. Guess what? It was like 2 days till retirement, right? Like, nope. Like she was almost there. And then she has to spend all this money to go back to buy the drugs, right? From the wholesaler. Yep. And that was the last of her money or whatever. And then she forgot that she had all these parking tickets or whatever she didn't pay off. And at one point in the story, they're like, they're getting chased, right? And they go to her car, and she's got a boot on her car, dude.
There you go.
Like,
make it more difficult.
Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, that's so out of left field, but that would be like one little thing. We're like, more pressure. Now what do you got to do? We got to get to the bus, and then we have a bus scene, right? Mm-hmm. And then the monsters are waiting for them at the next bus stop. Like, I just feel like there's so much good here. Like I said, my house analogy, they just need to kind of remodel the bathroom and the kitchen, and then I think this could be there. And under $10 million budget for this, if you could rewrite it and get it for the right price, I would totally greenlight this film. I think that there's a lot here, and it made the top 10, and I think it did. I think it deserved it. It just needs a little bit more, and one or two more rewrites to get there.
Yeah, it definitely, like, in this current state, I can't give it a green light in this current state. It's basically a reluctant pass for me. And it's not to say anything bad with regards to the writer. I think it's like, okay, you got to get, I mean, I don't like saying this advice, but with regards to a horror film and regards to this premise, you have to get a few more characters in there so that they could be the sacrificial lambs to elevate the stakes. And you have to kind of tighten up your scenes and cut some of the exposition to get through the time more effectively. And that this could be that type of sleeper hit for next Halloween. And that's kind of what you want.
I still think that one of those, I like that idea that we add more, and I think one of those should be some like naive little, like maybe some Mormon girl who's like about to graduate, and she's at the party, but she's not doing any drugs. She's being a good kid, right? Mm-hmm. And then she finds a bowl of M&Ms. And one of those pills had fallen into the bowl of M&Ms.
And then she's the victim. Yeah.
She eats one of them, and she's stuck with these people. And she's never done drugs her whole life, and now she's like totally screwed, and she gets killed. Like, I just think that there's a lot more layers we could keep adding to this that could make it an even better, like, Scream type film that could be. I just love the premise. It would be a very reluctant pass. I'm like, I'm right on the edge. I want to greenlight this, but we need a little bit more to do it. And I think it could be good. And I think keep it PG-13. It doesn't need to be R. I'm not against R movies. I love a lot of R movies. I'm just saying this one, you just don't need it. It doesn't need to be saw. It doesn't need to be super gory. Someone gets their neck broken. You could see, I'm not sure where the ratings board works with like a chest that's ripped open.
There's no rules to the ratings board, really. Like it's the MPAA is just, listen, it's 2 F-bombs, that gives you an R. 1 F-bomb, you're fine, so long as it's not sexually related. That's the only rule that I really know of that's kind of consistent. But anything else,
Mm.
it's like whatever they feel at the time. And the MPAA, they change every so many years. So it's new people that come onto that council every so many years. So yeah,
Yeah.
ratings. Like they claim they have a rule book. I've never really seen them follow it 100%. So
It
it's
depends. It depends on who's producing it, what studio they're liking that week when they're
no,
going off.
actually that's a little kind of irrelevant. It's really just kind of what do they it's basically based on feels, really.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
And
It's very
that's
subjective for them.
it is because like I've seen some R-rated movies where I'm like, why is this R-rated? Like there's nothing really R-rated about it. Heck, there's even like movies that got an X rating for violence and gore, and they're tame compared to some of the stuff that you've seen, Eli Roth do.
Right.
And then you find out, oh yeah, that's what their initial rating they got. They recut it so that they get the R, and then you see on the special features what they cut, and you're like, well, that's no real difference. So what is it? Just frequency? It's like because we had X amount of these scenes, that's why they gave it that higher rating, that NC-17 or the X rating, and that's why I had to cut back. It's nuts. There is a great documentary called "This Film Is Not Yet Rated," which talks about the MPAA. Highly recommend it. It's very, very good, and also it's very funny because they basically explain how ridiculous it is. Um, and that movie actually was rated by the MPAA, and they had to watch themselves being followed by a private investigator.
Are you serious?
Yep,
Oh
100%.
wow. That's like the
Um,
ultimate meta right there.
oh, dude, it was great. So I recommend that one. I actually do recommend, guys, if you're listening to this, read this screenplay. You should be able to find it with a Google search. But again, like always, if you cannot, just reach out to me on the Twitter X's at ScriptDoctorPhD. You can also sign up to the Patreon. It comes with a 1 week free trial membership where you get access to all of my posts, previous posts, articles, musings, reviews, what have you. Also, finding out what script we're going to be reading on the following week. And you can reach out to me there and I can hook you up with the script as well. As always, when it comes to those scripts, please don't try to share them or make them go viral. These are still works that these writers are trying to sell, and we don't want to impede them on that process. But luckily, that has not happened yet. But what's been fascinating is the fact that a couple of the scripts we've already reviewed up until this point are being produced, either studio produced or self produced. And that's actually a pretty cool aspect because when they do finally debut, we're going to do a script to screen comparison, obviously with Madden, which
Oh
Mac,
man.
you did a second thoughts on that one. So that's going to be a fun
I know I
thing to
wasn't
follow
primary
up
on
with.
that, and I really want to follow up on that because I was just the whatever that the bonus one, but that
Mm-hmm.
one's I'm excited to see Nicolas Cage as Madden. That's at first I thought what, but the more I think about it, I'm like I'm excited. What were any of the other ones that are getting independently made? Then
Oh,
you
I've
referenced
got to
more than
go
one.
back because this is the foolish part too. I have so much fun doing the shows with you guys that I forget to write notes about the shows afterwards.
Oh yeah,
So I've got to go back and do that. Or if you're a fan out there and you want to make some brief notes, throw that in the comment section, and then that'll be great help. But obviously, only if you want to do it. If you don't want to do it, don't worry about it. Don't waste your time. I will waste
okay.
my time for that.
I do have an idea though. I'd like to maybe start it with you and I because it's not quite technically October yet, but we're starting this now. How about with each show between now and Halloween, you have the guest and you yourself pick some of your favorite Halloween movie? Because you're gonna have to come up with a new one every week. But those of us that are only here once, we get at least say, hey, this is something I like to watch every Halloween. Is that cool?
Yeah, we could probably try that. I mean, it'd be a good thing to do like before we get the show started. So yeah, that'd be a fun little thing to do. I have no problems with that.
Because one of my favorite ones, I was just thinking about this while we are talking about this, and cheesy can't be some of the stuff that's out there. And one of the
Hmm.
ones that I loved that I don't think gets enough love now, that I loved as a child was the Monster Squad. I
Oh yeah,
freaking
that's a great one.
loved that movie as a kid. So I'm just curious, Script Doctor, what's one of your favorite Halloween movies you watched as a kid or that you still enjoy now?
Well, I mean, it's a horror. It's a horror comedy. It's not really a Halloween movie, but it's a horror comedy, and it's called Class Reunion. Um,
What? How old
yeah.
is it?
Oh, God,
I
it's
never
like in
heard of that.
1881, I think.
Okay, I gotta look this up.
It doesn't really have any names in it, which actually makes it more charming. But it's kind of like a National Lampoon style horror comedy that takes place at a class reunion at a basically a defunct, rundown high school that's been abandoned. And there's someone at that high school from their class reunion picking them off one by one.
Oh, this literally is a National Lampoon's film.
Pretty much. Yeah. Oh yeah. It is. It's
No,
just,
no, yeah,
yeah.
it is. It's on the cover,
Or
the
I
cover
think
art, or the
National
art.
Lampoon's
Yeah.
purchased it as made it one of their own, because that's one of the things that they did. They did National Lampoon's Animal House. That's like their official one. But
Uh-huh.
afterwards, if you made it an independent comedy and you couldn't find distribution, you could probably sell it to National Lampoon and they'd distribute it for you.
Oh,
And
okay. So yeah, because this is so on IMDb, it's showing National Lampoon's Class Reunion 1982.
82, right? Yeah. It is. It's a cheesy, funny horror. It's not the best comedy out there, but there's just something weird and charming about it, and it has some really good one-liners in it. That is just
Okay.
something that I enjoy. It's not my most favorite of the Halloween of my Halloween or horror films, because I don't have many, but it's one that I'm like, this is something that it's a little bit ahead of its time, or at least a little bit ahead of its time. It would have worked, probably hit better in like the late 80s, early 90s. But it's got something to it.
I'm gonna give it a go because I love here because I've never heard of this. I'm a huge movie buff, and it's rare that I come across something I haven't heard of that was not completely independent garbage. This looks pretty cool, so I'm gonna give this
And
a
this
go.
does
On
kind
the
of
list.
have some of that Animal House style of humor. And I think even one of the Animal House cast members is in it for a moment. So yeah,
Yeah,
I would say go check that one out too.
I'm not recognizing any of these actors. This is great. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I'm putting this on my list. I'll give it a go. Cool. Thanks. Oh no, you know what? There's one person in here, Anne Ramsey, the mom from Throw Mama from the Train. Don't throw Mama from the
Yes,
train.
she's in it. Yeah.
So I do recognize her, but I don't really recognize any of these other people. So cool. All right, sweet. Well, if you guys haven't watched it, it's definitely more geared towards kids, but Monster Squad is one of those
Oh, Monster
classics.
Squad's great. It's got Duncan Ruger in it, who I knew him from. He played Zorro in the Family Channel Zorro series, which is a fantastic series. I strongly recommend that as well. In addition to Monster Squad,
I just remember that part where he kicks Wolfman in the balls. It's so funny, dude.
yeah, Wolfman has nards. So yeah, that's it. So again, this is episode 39, screenplay 2 of the Halloween horror specials. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on the script as well, and also let us know your thoughts over on the Patreon. And you comment on the Patreon, we will read them out at the end of the show. As always, again, always like to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us this weekend. Have a wonderful weekend, and until next time, remember, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.